Meron ka bang problema sa iyong lipid profile results? Mataas ba ang iyong total cholesterol? Mataas ang LDL? Mataas ang cholesterol to HDL ratio? Nagpakuha ka ba ng ApoB or apolipoprotein B? Mataas din ba ito? Kayo ba ay natatakot na baka kayo ay atakihin na sa puso? Well, do not panic yet. We have to understand first kung ano ba ang iba't iba at bagong pananaw when it comes to lipid profile. So once and for all, i-discuss natin yan for the benefit of everyone, especially sa mga low carbers na hindi pa rin nakapanood ng lahat ng videos natin and hindi pa ganun ka-knowledgeable at parati pa rin nagtatanong at nagpapanik at natatakot when it comes to their cholesterol profile or lipid profile. So, ano ang problema sa inyong lipid profile results? At kayo ba ay kailangan na mag-panic o wag munang mag-panic. So we will discuss that one by one. So yung isang problema na usually nakikita natin is the total cholesterol na mataas. So total cholesterol, kailangan muna nating alamin kung ano ba ang composition ng total cholesterol. So total cholesterol is just the summative. Ito ay total lang ng HDL, LDL, yung hindi ganun ka-famous na IDL and VLDL. So, hindi ibig sabihin na kung mataas yung inyong total cholesterol ay eto ay delikado na because malay nyo, baka yung nagpapataas dito would actually be your HDL and the higher the HDL is actually good. So, hindi natin kailangan problemahin kaagad. Huwag muna mag-panic kung total cholesterol lang yung mataas sa inyong lipid profile result. So, number one, yan yung isa sa pinaka-importante na hindi natin kailangang katakutan kung elevated total cholesterol lang yung nakikita natin. That's why kailangan natin himay-himayin. Kailangan natin malaman kung ano yung composition nito at kung ano yung papataas sa ating total cholesterol level. Now, we will move on with our second na common problem sa lipid profile and that is elevated na LDL. So, in here, yan, mataas yung LDL. Yung problem sa, especially here in the Philippines that I noticed, kapag merong LDL, meron ng automatic. This is a screenshot of one of my patients. Of course, wala namang identifiers dyan na na-label agad as bad cholesterol. At yung LDL, yun yung old school na pananaw na ang LDL ay masama, already considered as a high risk na diretso for heart attack, for atherosclerosis. But totoo ba ito? And that is what we are going to clarify right now because in these studies, ito yung mas newer studies na, a study on more than 6 million patients and people, nakita nila na the higher the level of LDL are actually associated with greater longevity. Mas mataas yung mga lifespan ng may mataas na LDL cholesterol. So, hindi talaga siya ganon ka-significant when it comes to overall mortality. In fact, sobrang dami ng mga na heart attack, nagkaroon ng mga sudden death when it related to elevation of your atherosclerosis in your body, yung pagtaas ng inflammation sa ating mga ugat, are found to have level or normal level or even lower level of LDL. So, hindi protective when it comes to overall mortality. Hindi ibig sabihin na kapag mababa ang LDL mo ay mabubuhay ka na ng matagal, especially with studies like this na hindi pala tama yung old school na pananaw na LDL lang yung kailangan nating tingnan. So, we have to understand the whole picture. That is why we have this slide today. So, yan. This is what is wrong talaga sa mga lipid profile. If meron kayong kilala na owner ng laboratories, I suggest na kunin na nila yung labeling. Just put simple HDL or LDL. Hindi kailangan lagyan ng good or bad kasi nakakadulot ito ng unnecessary panic sa mga tao when hindi naman dapat, especially na naka-low carb kayo. Because if you are on low carb, LDL might actually be protective. Pero kung naka-high carb kayo at yung LDL ninyo ay mataas kasama yung other markers of inflammation, then maybe that's another story. But we are looking at these findings right now para tayo ay nasa tamang pananaw and hindi tayo magkaroon ng unnecessary panic. If you know anyone na makaka-benefit from this video, I hope you can share this to your timeline or your messenger group chats para ma-inform din sila, especially sa mga low carbers na marami nang nahikayat na mag-low carb, and all even practitioners, healthcare practitioners, medical technicians, doctors. This is actually somewhat new na hindi pa ganun ka widespread. Parang hindi pa ata nakaabot yung mga bagong journals na ito in the books that we use in med school. But in 5 years time, 10 years time, for sure it will already reach that. So LDL is not the only marker na dapat titingnan natin. Dahil sa maraming studies nga ngayon, this one, sa combined studies na ito, in more than 6 million patients and healthy population, ay merong better improvement sa kanilang lifespan and longevity kung mataas yung cholesterol, because LDL cholesterol is actually very important for our cellular repair, for our hormonal na production in our body, especially for the hormones na kailangan natin to maintain homeostasis or balance sa ating pangangatawan. Lowered cholesterol in the body is associated with poor cognition. So, yung hindi masyado maka-function mentally. So, there can be changes in mood, sa memory, baka magkaroon ng memory gap, and many other problems. Dry skin, poor wound healing, those are also related to too low level ng cholesterol sa katawan. So, hindi natin kailangan matakot kung ang LDL natin ay mataas, especially that with LDL, they are not created equal. Dalawang klase yung LDL na nakikita, especially ngayon sa mga naka-low carb. Sa mga naka-high carb or inflammatory diet, would be maraming maliliit na particles na LDL. So, nakikita nyo dyan, if I will enlarge this picture, yan, yung small LDL na more particles, pareho sila ng bigat. So, there can be both weighing 90, for example. Pero yung small LDL ay maraming maliliit na particles na LDL. At yung maliliit na particles na LDL na ito is the one that is associated with atherosclerosis and cardiovascular disease. Kapag marami yung mga small LDL na maraming particles, ito yung mas delikado. Whereas sa mga naka-low carb, low inflammatory diet, pwedeng pareho na ang LDL na total when it comes to lipid profile counting. Pero kung titingnan yung particles na ito, it has less particles. So the lesser the particles, the lesser din yung impact nito when it comes to atherogenesis, sa pagbuo ng atherosclerosis, yung nakakabara sa ugat ng tao. Kaya nagkakaroon ng heart attack, ng stroke, at marami pang iba. So, magkaiba yung LDL usually ng mga taong naka-inflammatory diet. Very highly inflammatory diet. Junk food, sobrang dami ng mga high fructose corn syrup na kinakain. And as compared to those kumakain ng mga whole foods, especially high in fiber, to which we will discuss in a short while. After nito, don't worry, tuturuan ko kayo kung paano mag-compute or kung paano yung better gauge, better indicator of good health when it comes to your lipid profile na kayo mismo ay marunong nang mag-compute. So next would be yung nakikita natin cholesterol to HDL ratio. So, if mataas yung cholesterol to HDL ratio, usually yung measure niyan is nasa dapat less than 3.5 lang daw or less than 5. But like in this patient, you can see na mataas yung kanyang HDL. Oy, hindi natin nakikita. So, we will put that there. Yan. Mataas yung kanyang cholesterol to HDL ratio. So, before, in an old school na computation, this is helpful kasi yung HDL is the only one that's considered as good cholesterol. Pero, may problema sa ganitong finding because hindi na take into account yung higher LDL na hindi naman talaga ganon kasama. So, it still comes down from the previous wrong notion na kapag mataas yung LDL, it's already a bad cholesterol. So, automatically, kung mataas yung LDL, ay tataas talaga yung overall total cholesterol as compared to HDL ratio. That's why, kahit mataas ito, hindi nyo rin kailangan mag-panic agad-agad, especially na your other markers of inflammation are low. And later, I will teach you kung ano yung tamang gagawin dito. Next would be the non-HDL. Kapag mataas yung non-HDL, it is also considered before as nakakatakot din. Kasi yung non-HDL, kasi considered lang again, still the same, going around the idea na HDL is the only cholesterol that is good. So, everything else na hindi HDL is considered as bad na. So again, it still boils down to correcting the idea na ang pagtaas ng LDL ay hindi talaga ganon ka-basic na dapat nating katakutan because again nga, sobrang dami na studies indicating that there's no need to fear or there's no need to aggressively lower down to low normal or below normal yung HDL because overall, meron din siyang impact if sobrang baba nito. And higher LDL in the background of no inflammation, yun yung importante, is actually protective. At sa mga naka-low carb, merong ibang klaseng LDL na actually the healthier kind of LDL. At yun yung tawag nating large kind, less particle na number of LDL. So non-HDL, of course, will be elevated because of high LDL. So hindi natin kailangan magpanic dyan. And of course, non-HDL, hindi lang siya puro LDL lang. Meron niyang VLDL, merong IDL, and again, the LDL actually ay marami yang level. So as you can see there, the LDL mismo meron siyang 7 different sizes of LDL. Okay? Marami siyang levels and the smaller at mas marami yung particles nito, yun yung mas dangerous side. But if you are on the larger kind, lower in number sa particles ng LDL, then it's not a cause of worry. Yan yung importante for us to understand na hindi lang enough for us to look at the total cholesterol, the LDL level, the cholesterol and HDL ratio, and the non-HDL. Lastly, yung isa sa tinitingnan din would be ApoB. So yung ApoB is just a protein na naka-attach sa mga lipoproteins tulad ng LDL, VLDL, and HDL. So, LDL, IDL, and VLDL. At yung naka-attach naman sa HDL would be ApoA. Okay? So, yung ApoB, of course, kung mataas yung other non-HDL mo, tataas din yung ApoB. So, that's why it's also considered as a good marker ng inflammation. Kapag mataas masyado yung ApoB mo, it is linked into higher chances of getting atherosclerosis. However, kahit nakakatulong yung ApoB, hindi siya ganon ka-specific because again, LDL might be there, although it can help, but there is a better way to gauge, which is the RC. Ano yung RC? That's remnant cholesterol, to which we will discuss in a short while. But for ApoB, hindi siya, number one, hindi siya widely available. Special test siya na I think here in the Philippines, kakaunti lang yung laboratories and hospitals na nag-offer ng ApoB determination. And most importantly, merong easier and much better way to gauge yung risk natin for cardiovascular disease other than ApoB. So this is just a visual representation. So yung HDL dyan is the orange ones at yung blue dyan is the ApoA. So ApoA is attached to the HDL at yung ApoB naman ay naka-attach siya sa lahat, sa VLDL, sa IDL, at sa LDL. So that's why hindi siya ganon ka-specific. Although it can be specific in such a way na kung ang LDL nyo is yung mga small particles na kind of LDL, then yun nga, dadami yung ApoB. But if you will see na say for example, yung LDL nyo is very high, but your ApoB is low, so that's actually a good marker. But if it's just within around a range na mataas pero hindi naman ganon masyadong mataas, then it might not be that very helpful. So because yun nga, yung large particle na kind of LDL, ito yung kanyang visual representation or pattern A. Ito yung nakikita sa mga low carbers, especially adhering to our safe list na kumakain ng whole foods, more natural foods, nag-a-avoid ng mga processed na saturated fats like yung mga all-purpose creams, and especially the ones na very high in trans fat na mga margarines, all of those. And yung higher risk na small LDL, eto yung magre-reflect ng may mas marami siyang particles na maliliit. So eto yung magre-reflect ng mataas na ApoB. So, ano ang pwede nating gawin para malaman natin kung tayo ba ay in check sa ating lipid profile? So, two better indicators in lipid profile. So, this time, you can compute your own. So, the number one na isa sa mas maganda at mas effective na way to indicate kung kayo ay high risk na aatakihin sa puso or magkakaroon ng stroke in 2 years time, in 20 years time, ay yung triglycerides to HDL ratio. Instead of total cholesterol to HDL ratio, compute for triglycerides to HDL ratio. Paano nyo gagawin yan? I-divide nyo lang. So, kukunin nyo lang yung total number of your triglycerides there, like in this patient, no? Yung triglycerides niya ay nasa 64, and then divide it with the HDL of 68. So, yung answer is actually 0.93. So, it's less than 1. Mas mataas pa yung kanyang HDL as compared to its triglyceride. And that is good news. If it's higher than 3, then that is considered as high risk. So, that's why hindi enough yung pagtingin lang sa cholesterol to HDL ratio. Kasi kung titingnan mo, cholesterol to HDL ratio there is already very elevated. However, if you will compute for triglycerides to HDL ratio, actually it is very, very low risk for developing cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, and strokes. But it's a different thing if meron ng previous history of heart attacks and strokes. It should be managed closely. So yun, this one is for general knowledge lang for you to see bago kayo matakot at bago kayo magpanic. So this triglycerides and HDL ratio is very important. Based on this study, nakita nila na the ratio of triglycerides to HDL predicts extensive coronary disease. So, in this study, in both men and women subjects na 220 males and 154 females, ay nakita nila na the higher yung ratio ng triglycerides to HDL, kung parang nasa times 3 na yung amount of your triglycerides as compared to your HDL, then that is something na we should manage. So, kailangan natin yang bantayan. If hindi naman siya tumataas, or at least bumaba from previous before when you started low carb, then at least there is hindi na ganon ka dami. So that's still an improvement. And just know na yung katawan ay merong iba na meron talagang genetic tendencies. There is a condition what we call as hypertriglyceridemia. So may mga tao talaga na sobra-sobra yung production of triglycerides. So as long as wala ring background of inflammation, so mababa yung HbA1c, mababa yung ESR, CRP, okay yung blood sugar control, then most likely it is just related to early adjustment ng mga naka-low carb, especially those who are on ketogenic diet and are physically active, kasi nagpo-produce din yung triglycerides because of its energy utility sa production na yan. But generally, if you're just an average, hindi ganon ka-active when it comes to your lifestyle and just starting with low carb, just having an HDL and triglycerides ratio na mas mataas yung HDL or somewhat around the same, less than 2 yung simula natin, make sure lang that it's not times 3, then it's okay. So yan yung goal natin. And the second indicator, better gauge of your lipid profile is computation of your remnant cholesterol. So how will you compute for your remnant cholesterol? So hindi lang dapat non-HDL. So better kung makuha natin yung remnant cholesterol. Paano natin i-compute yon? Yung total cholesterol, ima-minus nyo lang yung LDL at HDL dyan. So for example, for this patient, yung kanyang total cholesterol is 330, pero yung kanyang LDL ay 249 at saka yung kanyang HDL ay 68, yung remnant cholesterol niya is actually very low at 13. So, pasok na pasok siya sa target natin, which is less than 15. If your remnant cholesterol is more than 20, so based on research, meron kang higher risk of heart attack within 2 decades or 20 years. So, 20 years might sound long, pero yung buhay natin can actually be enjoyed and extended as long as we can na walang ganyang pangyayari. So, remnant cholesterol is a better indicator. Based on this study, remnant cholesterol is a stand-alone risk for heart attack and stroke. So, kahit pa wala pang ganon, wala pang, hindi kayo magpakompute ng triglycerides, hindi nyo titingnan yung total cholesterol, hindi nyo titingnan yung HDL, just the remnant cholesterol alone can already predict if you are low risk or high risk for heart attack and stroke. And this is the study that I've been telling you na as much as ApoB is helpful, pero based on this journal article in European Heart Journal, remnant cholesterol predicts cardiovascular disease beyond, okay, even better than LDL and ApoB as in a primary prevention study. So that's why mas maganda, tingnan natin yung ating remnant cholesterol and also our LDL and our HDL to triglycerides ratio. Yun yung dalawang pinaka-importante para hindi kayo magpanic. So, magpanic ng konti, magpakonsulta and be guided by your beloved low-carb doctors or your trusted cardiologist if ever yung triglycerides to HDL ratio ninyo ay more than 3 na and yung inyong remnant cholesterol ay more than 20 na. So, yun yung mga markers na kailangan natin. And of course, ano yung ating pwedeng gawin? Alam na natin how to improve our lipid profile and our overall health. For the longest time, exercise is always there. So if hindi pa kayo nagsisimula mag-exercise, you can do so, especially if you can exercise outdoors na merong sun exposure. That could be your best option. And there's 2 ways that you can do, especially sa mga hindi pa naka-low carb. At least man lang, gawin nyo yung dalawang ito. Decrease your fructose intake in the form of sugar, in the form of syrups, in the form of mga baked goodies na mga breads and mga desserts, especially high-carb ones, because those are loaded with fructose, including fruits. If kayo ay kumakain ng saging na 1 kilong saging sa isang araw, then that is still too much fructose. Kung kumakain kayo ng apple a day at maya-maya kumakain naman ng kamote, and then by lunchtime, meron naman kayong another desserts and ice cream and all of those, then you are piling up your fructose in your body. Bakit? Anong related ng fructose sa ating lipids? Fructose, kapag ito ay sobra na sa katawan, it is just converted into triglycerides, and you know the triglycerides to HDL ratio is a marker of cardiovascular health. So gusto natin pababain yung fructose natin and increase your fiber. So increase your fiber. Others will eat fruits kasi mataas yung fiber, pero mataas yung fiber ng fruits pero mataas din yung fructose. So it's better to increase the fiber na walang fructose, walang glucose. Good thing, marami nang nabibili like the psyllium husk. You can take 1 to 2 tablespoons of psyllium husk powder, pwede nyo mix sa inyong coffee, sa inyong tubig, or sa inyong pagkain. And studies show that it can decrease your LDL. So for those na takot talaga sa kanilang LDL na tumataas na, because as much as we are not very afraid of it, hindi rin natin gusto na merong ganong kataas. So somewhat just lower, it's still okay. So in these studies, meron nakikita na taking psyllium husk powder 1 to 2 tablespoons up to 3 tablespoons a day can help lower your LDL, VLDL, and IDL, and improve your HDL the natural way. So yan yung 2 things that is important. Kahit hindi pa kayo naka-low carb, kung meron kayong kilala na hindi pa naka-low carb, at least minimize their fructose intake and increase more of the high fiber food. So high fiber food would include vegetables. So yan. And of course, know more about fats. Huwag katakutan lahat ng taba, because there are fats that are actually our friend. there are fats that can help us. And the good fats are the fats that are in natural sources. So dyan, we have avocado, certain nuts and seeds, but careful lang sa nuts and seeds. Not everyone are tolerant with nuts and seeds. Eggs, especially organic eggs. Coconut oil, especially virgin coconut oil. Wild caught fish, so yung mga salmon. Dito sa Pilipinas, yung mga maliliit, mga dilis, those are still high in omega-3 din. Sardines, yung hindi na sa lata, but yung fresh sardines, those are good sources of omega-3. And extra virgin olive oil, kung meron, kung wala, okay lang, hindi kailangan maghanap. And for meat, grass-fed meat, especially beef, baka, kambing, those are the healthiest type. Second lang or third lang yung pork. As much as we love pork, but it's not the best kind of meat. We rather have you eating ruminant meat. So ruminant, yung mga ngumuya ng mga damo. So those are the healthiest kinds of meat. And of course, grass-fed dairy. The rest, kalimutan nyo na if it's not within these lists. So grass-fed na butter and other types are also okay. But the rest, pwede nyo muna yang kalimutan. Okay? So choose your fat well and hindi kailangan i-avoid lahat kasi kahit pa hindi kayo kumain ng kahit anong matabang pagkain, your body will keep on producing those cholesterol and it can equate into inflammation, especially if you are eating more of the carbohydrates, more of the glucose, more of the fructose, and hindi siya ma-outweigh ng bastang kain pag avoid niyo ng fats because your body will still produce those LDL, VLDL, IDL kahit nag-a-avoid kayo. But what you can do is avoid those fructose, avoid glucose, avoid those sugar, and it will lower down your inflammation. So know more about our low carb levels sa mga wala pang sakit. You can do low carb casually. Hindi kailangan ma-stress sa kung ano talaga yung kakainin. Just your normal, everyday Pinoy ulam, Pinoy food. Just make sure na na-eliminate niyo yung big carbs. So big carbs would include rice, would include pasta, soft drinks, desserts. Yun lang. Kahit yung junk foods lang muna eliminate niyo, you can already improve maybe 50% of your health. But of course, if you are on level 5 na marami ng sakit, meron ng high blood pressure, hindi makontrol ng diabetes, may fatty liver, may metabolic syndrome, malaki yung tiyan na hindi lumiliit, then maybe you need to be more strict in your low carb. Make sure na yung carbohydrate intake niyo hindi lalagpas sa 20 grams a day and it's a phytotoxin plus chemical free and organic kind. But for others naman na hindi naman ganon wala pa namang sakit, like for us, we don't have any illness, we don't maintain any medicine to control any sakit, then we can just be as casual. And of course, make sure na you stick to our safe list because our low carb nutrition hindi siya pampapayat, okay? It can lead into weight loss for those na nangangailangan talaga ng weight loss, but for those who don't need weight loss, actually, you will not lose weight as well. So, because low carb nutrition will target lower insulin, lower inflammation, lower oxidized LDL, yung mga small dense LDL na nakakatakot that we discussed a little while. It will increase fat burning, and increasing fat burning means cleansing in your body and decreasing the fat and protein buildup, which equates to tumor formation and many more. So, yun lamang. I think we've discussed more today para for once and for all, yung lipid profile natin and cholesterol. Alam natin kung kailan tayo magpanic at huwag magpanic. And hindi kailangan magpanic kung total cholesterol lang yung mataas, kung LDL lang yung mataas at the background of no inflammation, elevated cholesterol and HDL ratio, especially kung mababa yung ating remnant cholesterol. High ApoB can be a cause of worry, but hindi naman siya ganun ka-cause of worry if everything else is normal. So, better make sure that you also check your, hindi lang ito yung isolated. Titingnan nyo rin. It can be a cause of concern, but make sure you also check your triglycerides to HDL ratio. Goal is less than 1. Remnant cholesterol goal is less than 50. And of course, I hope to see you sa ating masterclass if you wish to know more about cholesterol and many other things in our low carb and fasting lifestyle. Available yung masterclasses natin for those lifestyle diseases at www.lcfmasterclass.com. And I hope to see you this coming October 1, Sunday on National Low Carb Day 2023. I hope it's going to be on a Sunday, but we will start by 1 o'clock. Para for those who would like to attend church first in the morning, you can attend church and then we can have the National Low Carb Day by 1 o'clock on October 1. October 1, that is a Sunday this year. I will see you there. Maraming salamat. Stay tuned po sa mga announcement natin. And I hope you are always well and do low carb safely by sticking to our safe list. I think that's it. Make sure to save this video para ma-share ninyo whenever somebody asks you about your lipid profile at para wag magpanic agad-agad. Know how to check it because these are the newer studies expressing how we should look at our lipid profile. Hindi lang basta-bastang total cholesterol or LDL lamang. It is so much better to check other parameters. So I think that's it. Yun lamang. Maraming salamat, everyone. I hope to see you again in our next video. Na hindi ko pa alam kung saan, but soon we will have a series of videos again together with our National Low Carb Day na mga guest speakers and ating mga stars on our low carb community. Maraming salamat, everyone. Stay low carb, stay safe. Bye!